Overland Park is rated as one of the best cities you could move to or buy a home in the entire country. Has one of the best school districts nationwide, pretty much every shop, restaurant, or activity that you could ever possibly ask for. But in this video, we're going to break down 5 reasons why you absolutely, positively should not move to or buy a home in Overland Park. If you stick around to the end, I'll tell you the 3 key cities that many people end up liking even more. Now, the first one is one of the most common complaints I hear about this city. But before I tell you exactly what it is, I have to preface this video with, I have nothing against Overland Park. I don't have a vendetta, quite the opposite. I've made so many videos on this channel about Overland Park, comparing it to other cities. And as always on this channel, I like to cover both sides of each of these cities. So you'll find all of my pro Overland Park videos down in the description below. Starting with number 1 is cookie cutter subdivisions. If you're looking for homes that look kind of like this, or this, you'll find that the closer you go to downtown Kansas City. So if you're in Johnson County, Westwood Hills, you cross over state line, you'll find that several places throughout Kansas City, Missouri, Waldo, Brookside. The architecture is absolutely beautiful. The architectural design, the way we built homes back then, the materials we used back then, it's changed quite a bit since a lot of those homes went up, and many of them are over 100 years old. If you look at the footprint of the Kansas City metro area, Overland Park is a pretty new city. So here's how I think of this. There are 3 different sections to Overland Park. You've got North, Central, and South Overland Park. North Overland Park, everything north of 435. A lot of those homes were built in the 1950s and onwards. So what you'll notice is they don't really look cookie cutter. There are actually some very unique homes in that part of Overland Park. If you go south of 435, this is when Overland Park had quite an explosion in population growth. So if you look at this graph, you'll notice that in the 1980s, the population started increasing exponentially. As a result, a lot of homes were built south at around 435 between 1980s and run up to 2008, when we had just a ton of inventory hitting the housing market. When you've got a population growing that quickly, you got to build homes very efficiently. A lot of land was built, developed, homes went up. Some of them looked very, very similar, but I think there's a big difference between what you'll find in like this central area of Overland Park compared to like literal tract homes that you'll find in Texas, for example, where it's just a copy paste, the exact same floor plan for like rows and rows and rows of on end. In fact, this complaint is so common that most new home communities today, which you'll find in South Overland Park, developed over the past like decade or so, starts at like 151st around there, I'd say, and then goes farther south to about 178th, 180th Street. A lot of those communities were developed with this complaint in mind, meaning they've got specific architectural like regulations. The HOA will not allow the same house to go up next to each other. Now, this is all to say that home styles, designs, suburbs around Kansas City all vary widely from one another. They were built in different time periods. So if there's something specific you're looking for, whether it's a new home or a pre-existing home, whether it's in Overland Park or another city in the Kansas City area, we can help you make sure that it's absolutely not cookie cutter while still getting you the location that you're really after. So if you have any questions or if you'd like to see what that looks like, there's a link at the top of the description. My contact info is down there as well. Feel free to give me a call, text, or email, and we'd love to support you. Part number 2 is home prices in Overland Park. This 3-star review on niche.com sums it up nicely. It says, wonderful place to live. Blue Valley District is amazing. Teaching staff great. Local medical care is top notch, and then goes on to say the reason for the 3 stars is it's very expensive. The housing shortage, Johnson County is doing nothing about. Housing costs have gone up 40% in the last 7 years. Goes on to talk about taxes compared to the Kansas City metropolitan area and other major metropolitan areas across the country. Now, you'll note that this comment was left in 2020, and 3 years have elapsed since then, all with the housing shortage, all with a very competitive housing market, and with housing prices increasing exponentially because of mortgage rates. If you look at the data in our MLS, which is what records all sale data, this is what Zillow, Redfin, Trulia, all of them are pulling data from. What you'll notice since 2014 for pre-existing homes, this doesn't include any new construction properties, you'll notice the prices went from $218,000 to about $400,000. You can look at the averages. I don't think they matter because they include a lot of outliers, many extreme outliers, massive homes being built, very inexpensive homes being sold, but the median is more representative of what you'll see today. So that's nearly a doubling of home prices in the last 10 years. If you want another way to visualize this, here's what it looks like in terms of median property values, not necessarily closed home sales. This is Overland Park in the blue and Johnson County in the orange. You can see that Overland Park is a little bit more expensive than Johnson County. Although it didn't start that way, it's certainly gotten more expensive over time. And if we throw in one more comparison, this red line thrown in here is the average across the United States. And you can see while the United States median property values kind of plateaued because of economic uncertainty over the last year, year, Overland Park, Johnson County held strong, which is good news. You might be paying a little bit higher price, but we have a very, very strong housing market, and it's likely that you will see pretty solid and sustainable appreciation because everybody wants to move here. Now, this all brings up the question, why is it getting more expensive? Why are home prices in Overland Park continuing to increase? And you probably have a pretty good idea as to why. One is the ratings. It gets a lot of PR. Johnson County, it's a great place to live. It gets a lot of PR as well. But Overland Park, it's at the top of so many different rankings. It's like the city that everybody starts when they're starting to do research. They're trying to decide where to live. That's the one everybody goes to. And as a result, the value starts to go up because a lot of people decide to move here. Second is inflation. You've seen the last couple of years, also the housing shortage is part of this. There are very few properties being sold on the market compared to demand. So that pushes prices up, even though mortgage rates have gone up, and it's become more and more and more expensive over the last several years as it's happened. And then finally, I would say the Blue Valley School District is a big part of it. The Blue Valley School District gets a lot of press as well. It's rated as one of the best in the entire country. Now, this is all to say that there are still good deals to be found in Overland Park, even with the housing shortage, even with high mortgage rates. And Overland Park can certainly be worth it, especially if you are after the Blue Valley School District. You just have to know going into it that you're going to be paying a little bit more because the value of the location. And while we can certainly help you navigate that, keep in mind that at the end of this video, I'm going to share with you 3 popular cities that many of our clients ended up preferring over Overland Park. So stick around till then. But for now, we're going to move on to part number 3, which is all about HOAs. This seems to be one of those topics where you either love them or you hate them. And either way, I'm going to show you what to look for and possibly what to avoid. So if we go back to part number 1, we talked about the history. You've got North, Central, South Overland Park. Everything north of 435, you're going to find some HOAs. For the most part, they're not going to be very restrictive. If you do end up in an HOA in that part of North Overland Park, the fees are going to be like $200, $300, maybe $400 a year. A lot of the times they only handle trash recycling and other small stuff. If you go south of 435, that's where you'll start seeing more and more HOAs. Keep in mind, this is when the homes were developed in like the late 80s onwards into the early 2000s. This is around when HOAs start to become a big thing. Amenities in some of these communities start to come into play. So what you'll notice is quite a big variety. Some of them don't have HOAs, some of them do but don't have amenities, and some of them have an HOA and amenities like a pool, sports court, trails, all that kind of stuff. What I've seen, if no amenities, usually $500 or less. If you do have amenities, I'm usually seeing anywhere between like $500 a year all the way up to maybe $1,500. And some of the new construction communities developed in the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years or so, those amenities are quite expected. Like if somebody moves to Kansas City, a lot of the time they're expecting, I want to make sure there's a pool, playground, trails around the community. Sometimes these can be upwards of $1,500 to $1,000 a year. What you'll also notice as you're looking around at different HOA fees and homes online is that some of these are maintenance provided, meaning they cover snow removal in the winter, they mow the lawn in the spring, summer, and a little bit of the fall. Sometimes they'll even help repair some of the paint on the exterior of the property and some other things like that. Typically, I see those anywhere between, let's say, $250. I haven't really seen anything over $400, but I'm sure it exists somewhere out there. But I think it's always important to read the restrictions in the HOA and the HOA covenants before you write an offer on a home. That way you know exactly what you're walking into and what kind of restrictions you might be facing. Part number 4 is new construction homes, specifically the cost to buy or build a new home in Overland Park. It's not just property values, it's not just land values, but construction costs have increased considerably over the last several years as well. A lot of the supply chain stuff is behind us, which is good for prices. A lot of these builds are finishing a lot quicker because there's just less demand for new construction right now, but the prices are not going down. Here's what they look like over the last 10 years. You can see the median close price in 2014 started around $526,000 and in 2023 ended up at $813,000. I would disregard 2024. $950,000 is not the median price right now. And the reason for that is that most homes that are going to be built in Overland Park this year will probably land somewhere between the 7, 8, and lower 900s. Of course, there are a lot of $1 million properties that are being built in Overland Park, especially in the Blue Valley School District, which we'll talk about in a second. If you're looking for an affordable or the lower price point for a new construction home in Overland Park, you're looking at South Point and Wolf Run, which are both in South Overland Park. I believe they're both in the Spring Hill School District, not the Blue Valley School District. And the starting price is somewhere around the lower 500s or the lower 600s. Now, I can tell you for a fact, and we'll talk about it at the end of this video, that you can build a home in Johnson County and neighboring cities to Overland Park for less than $600,000. If you did want to build a home in the Blue Valley School District, the data looks a little bit more expensive. And as you can see, we've got the same 550 number from 2014, but the cost to build in the Blue Valley School District in 2023 was around $924,000. $800,000, which is a bit more expensive than the $813,000 in all of Overland Park last year. If we do that same comparison for the least expensive home that you could buy in that school district in Overland Park, you're looking at Southern Meadows. There are a couple in Sundance Ridge, but you're looking at the mid to low 600s. Now, in case you are interested in new construction homes or building a home in the Kansas City suburbs, I'm going to link a whole playlist full of videos where we tour new home communities and also some of the most popular floor plans. I'll link it in the description so you can check it out after this video. We're going to move on to part number 5, which is all about mature trees. This has been a popular request that I've had from several clients, especially people who are, relocated to the Kansas City area, having a tree-lined streets full of mature trees. That's part of what makes it feel like home. And there's clearly a big difference between having that and not having that, or being in an area that's newer where the trees aren't quite matured. It's going to take another 15 to 30 years for it to get to that point. And just like everything else on this list, that's true of some areas of Overland Park and less true of others. So just like we've talked about, north of 435 in North Overland Park, not going to be a problem. It's going to feel very similar to Prairie Village, Fairway, Mission Hills, Roland Park, Westwood, where there are a ton of trees, and where a handful of those cities that I just listed pride themselves on being the city of trees. And as you can guess, the farther south we go in Overland Park, the less that is the case. Now, there are a couple subdivisions in the central Overland Park area where this is just not true at all. There are very mature trees. They've done a great job of preserving them over time. You can look at Lionsgate, Nottingham Forest. There are several others where this is the case. But if you're looking at a price point between, let's say, 500 and maybe the mid 700s in Overland Park. So we're looking for a home that's maybe 3,000 square feet, 4 beds, 5 beds. It can sometimes be a little bit hard to find that in that price range with mature trees lining the streets. Now, that is absolutely not to say that it's impossible. And if you're watching this like years into the future and the housing shortage is no longer an issue, a lot of this is due to the housing market where home prices are at right now. But you really have to be careful, and you have to keep your eyes peeled for a good deal in one of those neighborhoods that does have mature trees popping up, because right now with the way the market is, it can be a little more challenging. More about the mature trees in just a second before we get to the 3 main cities where I've had a handful of clients choose them over buying a home in Overland Park. If you're thinking about buying a home, building a home in the Kansas City suburbs, we would absolutely love to help you, whether you're local here or relocating here. It doesn't just have to be Overland Park. If you've got any questions, if you feel like we'd be a good fit and you want to see what working together would look like, by all means, feel free to reach out. There's a link at the top of the description. My contact info is there as well. So you can give me a phone call, text message, email. About 90% of my clients find me through these YouTube videos, and pretty much everything we've talked about in these videos is inspired by one of the situations that I've worked with clients to overcome. So no matter what you're looking for, we can help you out. Feel free to send us a message, and we'd love to be able to make all of this more specific to you. Now, what are these 3 cities that are supposedly even better than Overland Park? This is based on what I've seen with clients that I've worked with who are relocating to Kansas City. Oftentimes, the research that you're able to do online, you see Overland Park, it's at the top of all the ratings, and then you learn about some of these other suburbs, right? Maybe surrounding Overland Park or over on the Missouri side, like a Lee's Summit, for example. What I've noticed is that it seems like everybody starts the search with Overland Park. And then depending on what type of suburb, what type of town and area of town you want to live in, everybody kind of branches off in what seems like 3 different directions. And of course, there are plenty more than this, but what I've noticed, Olathe has been a very, very big one. I've had a lot of people start in Overland Park, end up in Olathe. It's because it's one of those things where you start looking at properties on the market, you see what you can get for the value of your money, you see the condition it's in, how new it is, what you need to update for that price point, and then you go to a surrounding city where it still checks off quite a few boxes, but the value of the property you're able to get is just so much higher. We've done comparisons for all 3 of the cities that I'm about to mention. So one is like starts in Overland Park, goes to Olathe. You're getting a little bit bigger of a home. It's a little bit newer of a home. Maybe you're not smack dab in like the best part of Overland Park, but you're very, very close and you're getting more value for your money in some instances. Totally depends on what you're looking for. Another instance that I've seen is Leawood, right? It's right next to Overland Park. Some parts of Leawood can feel like an extension of Overland Park. The farther north you go, the more Leawood is going to feel similar to like Mission Hills, Fairway. You've got very, very large lots. At least the frontage is very, very wide. You've got very mature trees. It's more expensive than many areas of Overland Park. A lot of people seem to love it. You'll see it a lot at the top of the ratings. And then the third scenario, and this has been a quite popular one, is between Overland Park and Lee's Summit. It seems like Lee's Summit, if there is like one suburb on the Missouri side that gets quite a bit of press, Lee's Summit could be a contestant for it. And it's another situation where the feel is very different. It's way more small town than Overland Park, and the value of the home, the newness factor of the the home, the condition of the home you can get in Lee Summit compared to Overland Park, it's very different. But you've also got very good schools in Lee Summit as well. You've got great schools in Leawood and Olathe. So what this really comes down to is the feeling you get while you're touring all of these homes and you see what's available on the market. And if you'd like to see more videos where we compare some of these most popular Kansas City suburbs, you can click right here. This is a full playlist where I basically compare Overland Park to many of the other suburbs in Johnson County. Or you can click right here, which is the video that YouTube thinks you would enjoy the most. If you have any questions, my contact info is down below. Click either here or here, and I'll see you on the other side.